In April of this year, I did a little series on autism. Hi, my name is Babbles, and I am autistic. And I'm back in that world that I made back in April because there's been some discussion lately about autism. And I want to be clear, I'm not a politician, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical professional, but I do have autism. So I do think I have maybe some important perspective on this. So, autism has been researched up and down. Maybe not as much as I would like. There are some issues that I think affect a lot of autistic people that I think we could stand to know more about. But for the most part, we know a lot more about it than we know about quite a few other things. We know, for example, pretty certainly what causes it. And it's all genetics. I can look way up and down my family line and find people who maybe weren't diagnosed, but were almost certainly on the spectrum somewhere. I even have a few people in my family that have been diagnosed. It has a lot to do with genetics and a couple other things, but the thing that we're pretty certain of is outside factors don't really have an effect on whether or not someone is autistic. Now, outside factors might affect how that autism presents itself. For example, I have a lot of issues with sound. So, when I am in a situation where it's really loud or there's a lot of different types of sounds going on, I get very overstimulated. So, I might seem more autistic, for lack of a better phrase, than I usually do. That doesn't mean I'm any more or less autistic than I was outside of that situation. It just means that the situation I'm currently in is making me distressed and making some of those traits more obvious. Now, I am all for research. And I think research into medications can only be good. I think knowing more about what we put in our bodies is a great thing. I do think a lot of the things that we currently take, such as vaccines and Tylenol, I do think generally they're pretty safe. But I'm all for making them safer if that's possible. However, something that I'm not okay with is autism constantly and consistently being used as a scapegoat for these things. We are constantly put in the firing line because people want to research something or they need to make money off of something. I don't even fully know everything. But I'm tired of being seen as a tragedy, and I'm tired of my fellow autistics being seen as a tragedy and being seen as a quote unquote horrible crisis. The truth is, we've always been here. We just know more about what autism looks like, so more people are getting diagnosed. Honestly, that's pretty much the only reason, or the only reason that I find compelling, pretty much the only reason why we're seeing more and more people get diagnosed. I got diagnosed in the early 2020s. Does that mean when I was born in the late 90s that I wasn't autistic? Of course not. I was. We just didn't know that autism could look like me. And there are loads of other people who have gone through the same thing. There are even people in their 70s and 80s getting diagnosed. Does that mean when they were born all those decades ago, they weren't autistic and they suddenly developed it? No. It just means that they weren't noticed as autistic. Because honestly, back then, it was extremely new. But we can even look back at people from history, from hundreds of years ago, and maybe there isn't enough data to completely diagnose them, but there's enough that we're able to say it's kind of likely. It's kind of likely they were autistic. I guess what I'm trying to say, or I guess what I'm trying to show, is a slightly different perspective. We have always been here. And I really hope we continue to be here. And I know that there are loads of people showing support. I've even seen it in people that I don't really talk to anymore just because I don't see them, sharing things on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, showing their support. I've also seen people showing the opposite, which I will admit does hurt a little bit. But at the end of the day, I'm here, I'm autistic, and I'm actually pretty glad about that. And I'm pretty glad that there are other autistic people out there who are pretty glad to be autistic too. So, with everything that's going on, I urge you not to give in to fear. Because that's something that scares me a lot. Is that people will fall for fear mongering. And at the end of the day, we'll all be worse off for it. So this isn't really asking anything other than maybe keep an open mind about the people around you. And I guess have a good day.